shit to get involved in politics. Who am I supposed to vote for? Am I supposed to vote for the Democrat who's going to blast me in the ass, or the Republican who's blasting my ass? Politics is just all one big ass blast. A woman in politics is like a donkey doing calculus. That's politics, bitch! That's politics, bitch! That is politics, bitch! But with global warming...
Jump science! Hey guys, how's it going? Matt from Foulball Productions here. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you guys are doing well, because I'm doing phenomenally. Thank you very much. This is the 116th episode of the MFer podcast. I thank you very much for spending your time with me. I apologize for coughing on mic. I thought that was muted. I didn't realize that this stream that I'm using, this Rumble stream that I'm trying out today, you have to adjust that. You have to press mute. So I'm very sorry. Very sorry about that. You know, I apologize for that disgusting sound. That must have been really weird. You must have been like, what the hell is going on? But anyway, yeah, I'm trying out a new studio. I'm trying out the Rumble studio. What's up, Big Ship? How you doing, brother? Good to see you. Hello, hello, hello. And Todd Baker. Voting doesn't matter. Going to catch the replay. Christ is king. Based. Papa Cotton, how are you? What's going on? And yeah, hi guys. All right, so sorry about that. I apologize. I'm trying out this new studio. This one's free. Rumble's free. There's all these. It's crazy. I've talked about it quite a bit, and I'm sure it's not that interesting, but they had this thing called StreamYard, which most of us use, which you guys are probably familiar with the, every streamer uses it. Well, they got bought out by private equity, I guess, a year or so ago, and literally tripled their prices. Like, it's an obscene ask what they have for StreamYard. And it's like, I probably could pay it. I probably could, but I don't want to. I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. So that's why I've been trying a bunch of different ones. I tried OBS, which I do like OBS, but it's not as intuitive, but it's a good one. So I'm trying out this Rumble one because it's free with my Rumble account. So I figured I'd give it a shot and see how it goes. I'm just mostly going to talk today. So, it doesn't really require all that much, but figured I'd give it a shot. So, hey, folks, welcome to the MFer podcast. Is this live on YouTube? Why do I not see it? Is everything cool? Can you not see me? Oh, that is so stupid. Oh my God. All right. Well, obviously going to have to tweak and adjust with the way that this works. Am I on the screen now? I had to remove that media. Oh my God. All right. I don't know how this Rumble account's going to do. But anyway, we've got a great show for you today. I've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to follow up. We're talking more about the war in Iran, as well as potential peace talks between Lebanon and Israel, and also what's going on with Yemen. There's a lot to talk about, and it's all about this war. Thank you, Shippy. Yeah, it's so ridiculous. Anyway, you could hear me when I didn't want you to. And then you couldn't see me when I did want you to. Very intuitive software here, Rumble. Very good. Very good stuff. Anyway, all right. Let's break it down. Let's get into it. Let's start this off and see how this is going to go. Oh, it looks like is there no live, dual stream today? It doesn't look like, I think we will not be joined by the wacky boomer contingent in the dual stream. So it's just us today, guys. Just the normal people. Yeah, there's no dual stream going on. Okay, so it's just us today. That's probably better, honestly. Those guys get a little distracting, to be completely honest. But okay, so we are going to break into this. So do a little recap. So last week we talked about this ceasefire and kind of how absurd it is, and how it doesn't really quite resemble any kind of a win for the United States. It really just looks like Iran's holding all the cards. And one of the biggest issues with the ceasefire was the fact that in the points that Trump agreed to, even though he claimed that he did not, was the fact that Israel would have to stop its war with Lebanon. Now, the other day, I walked you all through what the war with Lebanon is all about and Hezbollah's involvement and why that is such a big ask. Let's put my phone on silent here. And why that's such a big ask. Well, today they had some negotiations going on. They had talks, potential peace talks. Now, this is what I find is just so interesting about the media, right? And just how bullshit they are. So I have an article here from the Washington Post that is talking about how this went. Now, when I read this earlier today at around 11 a.m., the tone of the article was very different. Now, it might be that what happened was the information got updated and they changed their perspective. However, in the beginning, it was a very cynical article that was basically laying the blame at Israel's feet, saying that they're being completely unreasonable in these talks and there's really no daylight, right? But today, then this was updated around 4 o'clock. No, actually, the talks went pretty well. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to break it down. Let me got this article here. All right, we can see it. Everything's actually up. Great. Okay. Working fantastic. Everything's good so far, folks. Let me know in the chat if there's any issues. What's up, Daily Riot? How you doing, brother? Oh, my word. Oh, my goodness gracious. All right, anyway. Okay, so Lebanese and Israeli diplomats hold rare face-to-face meeting in Washington. Now, like I said, remember what I said about the tenor of this article. Secretary of State Marco Rubio hosted ambassadors from the two neighboring states in what was described as a working group aimed at reaching a ceasefire. Senior diplomats from Lebanon and Israel met in Washington on Tuesday, a rare face-to-face encounter as their host, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, sought to make peace between the two states. The event, which lasted more than 2 hours, was described as a working group aimed at reaching a ceasefire amid ongoing cross-border hostilities. It was attended by Lebanon's ambassador to the United States, Nada Hamada Moawad, and her Israeli counterpart, Yael Leiter. Speaking to reporters afterwards, Leiter called the meeting a success, saying that both sides had agreed on long-term vision that there should be a clearly delineated border between our countries. The talks would continue within weeks, he said. Now, earlier, okay, great, cool, good to hear, Shippy. Earlier, when I had read this, it was basically a non-starter. They accomplished nothing. Now, maybe I should go back to the Wayback Machine and try to pull this article from earlier because, you know what, I might even try to do that because it was actually, the tenor of it was so completely different. And it had to do with what we were talking about last week with the very nature of Hezbollah, right? As I pointed out and highlighted, Hezbollah is not it's not like a terrorist group in the traditional sense, like ISIS or Al Qaeda, that has bases but doesn't really work. Let me see here. Okay, archive pages. That doesn't really work in the same ways as something like Hezbollah. Hezbollah is specifically Lebanese. It's a very Lebanese organization, and it's very entrenched in the government. Like I pointed out last week, 10% of Hezbollah is in an open Hezbollah party that has 10 seats. No, sorry, 10%. So something like 15 seats in the Lebanese parliament, right? They're part of the government. They're part of politics. There's tens and tens of thousands of them. They're heavily armed. In some areas, they are the military. I forget what the name of the lesbian. That's fucking, they got a lesbian army over there. Lots of scissoring, real gay. But no, the Lebanese army, what their military is called, but it's a weak state. They do not have a lot of power or a lot of ability to throw around to like get rid of this insurgent force, if you will, military force, armed fighting force, whatever you want to call it. They're not really in a position to do that. And that was reflected as much. Let me see here. Okay, it doesn't look like the Wayback Machine has this. That's too bad. The page is available on the web. Because the difference in the article was, now we just read that. What they say, everything's good. You know, we're making steps. That was not the case. Earlier, it was basically Netanyahu being like, we are not negotiating. There is no negotiation. The only thing we're going to try to do is get some talks into how we're going to disarm Hezbollah. That's it. There's no middle ground. There's no compromise to be made. It's literally, you get rid of Hezbollah and we don't bomb you. That is the arrangement. Now, okay, maybe to someone that might sound like, well, you know, they keep firing rockets across the Israeli-Lebanese border. Maybe that's something they should do, but it's not something that they can do, right? It's not reasonable for Israel to ask the Lebanon to just disarm this army with all these munitions when they don't really have the ability, which you would have to understand, that you would have to infer that most likely the Israelis understand that and recognize that that's actually probably not possible. So they do a similar thing like they did in Iran, where they create an impossible ask. They create an impossible barrier, right? Like before the Iranian war kicks off, what are they asking for? They're asking for no nuclear. It was like no nuclear enrichment. First it was no nuclear weapons. Then it went to enrichment. Then it became, you have to defund your proxies and you can't have ballistic missiles. The request became literally impossible to ask. Like, it would create all types of war and conflict, and then they would be just so vulnerable. It's an impossible ask. I mean, it's something they wouldn't even consider. They didn't even come to the table with it. And Israel does this a lot so that they can look like, hey, we tried to negotiate for peace. They didn't want peace, so we started war. That's what they're doing here in Lebanon. Same thing, right? They're saying disarm Hezbollah. That's the only agreement we're going to have. It's like, well, how? Like, what solution are you proposing? Are you going to get the UN involved? Are you going to get the United States involved? Is the EU going to use their military forces? And also, like, what happens when we do? Are you just going to then continue to indiscriminately bomb us? Or, what's the possibility of the future moving forward? And of course, they don't really have an answer because, as I explained last week, they don't care. To them, Hezbollah, existential, gotta go. They're an Iranian proxy. They don't like Israel. They don't like the Zionists. They've killed Israeli civilians. Now, I'm not trying to make light of them killing Israeli civilians, but as I'm going to scroll down here, you're going to see that proportionality is not something the Israelis really concern themselves with, right? You know, eye for an eye kind of thing, where it's something where, okay, I punched you, you can punch me. No, it's you punch me, I burn your house down. Like, that's how the Israelis handle this type of shit. So the State Department said that the meeting was the first. Oh, yeah. Burn your house down with all your family inside. Let me just clarify that. The State Department said that the meeting was the first major high-level engagement between Israel and Lebanon since 1993. Blah, blah, blah. The meeting comes amid a shaky 2-week ceasefire in the U.S.-Israeli war. In response to strikes fired at Israel by Hezbollah, a political and paramilitary group in Lebanon and key regional ally of Tehran has conducted heavy bombardment of Beirut, along with a ground invasion of southern Lebanon, where residents were ordered out of more than 10% of the country, displacing 1 million people, according to the United States or the United Nations. Hezbollah has said it fired rockets at Israel as revenge for the killing of Iran's supreme leader, right? That was day 1 or day 2 of the war, where the Ayatollah Khomeini was killed, right? So they're like, that's bullshit. You know, we're Shia. That's our Shia leader. You know, fuck you. They fire rockets, okay? Over 2,000 people have been killed, including 252 women and 166 children in Lebanon in response to those rocket attacks. In Israel, they got rid of the numbers. These sons of bitches. Oh, no, here we go. Okay. Israeli strikes said to have killed, and the Hezbollah strikes into Israel have killed 12 soldiers and 2 civilians. 14 people. They killed 14 people, got killed by Hezbollah. Israel kills 2,000. This is what I'm talking about. They do not play fucking games. Now, I feel like in any other context, right, we would consider that a war crime. You know, it's like you're killing civilians. These weren't military bases they were bombing. And Israel always has the big excuse, right? It's like, well, they hide amongst the civilians, so what are we supposed to do? That's, you know, true to a degree, but like I explained, like Hezbollah isn't just, it's not ISIS, it's not Al Qaeda. They are the Lebanese people to a certain percentage, right? So it's like you're like, well, it's kind of like saying that everyone in Palestine is Hamas. It's the same thing. It's like if you're anywhere around these people, you happen to live anywhere near anyone who's in Hezbollah, associated with Hezbollah, had a nice, pleasant thought about Hezbollah one time, you're getting got. Israel doesn't give a shit. That's how severe their responses are. Now, we're gonna see how this plays out. I'm not optimistic because I say like Israel's requests are very unreasonable. Now, and as far as we know, the way Israel interacts with their neighbors and diplomatic relations and all that, they don't really ever acquiesce. They're not really curious in hearing what other people's opinions of the situation are. Not ours, not the UN, not the EU. They don't give a shit, right? They feel they have it. They're entitled to just kill everyone who disagrees with them. Kind of, honestly, it sounds extreme. That's sort of true. That's sort of how it is. So I can't imagine they're going to dramatically change their mind on this Hezbollah thing. But the truth of the matter is that Israel, I'm sure that they've tried to regroup since the ceasefire, but they're actually not in a great position coming out of this war. There was something to say that someone was saying that their Iron Dome, which is, a metaphor for a series of interceptor Patriot missile rocket batteries that, shoot down any kind of incoming threat, was pretty much depleted. I was listening to, I think it was Academic Agent was saying that from Iran's point of view, the ceasefire was a real military failure because had they said, fuck you, and kept bombing, they may have actually landed some serious strategic blows against Israel. Now, who knows how that would have played out for Iran? Like I just pointed out, Israel does not play games when you take out their civilians, or really any Israeli, any Jew anywhere. They are not okay with it. So maybe they would have nuked back. It's hard to say. But they're not in great shape. So maybe it's possible that they're getting a little more not human, but they're weaker, where they have their backs up against the wall more than you would think. I'm just trying to be vaguely optimistic. It's hard to say what'll happen with that with Hezbollah and Lebanon. They had a peace for about a year and a half. Maybe they can try to get it back, but I don't know. We'll see. That's the update. I don't think there's anything more. No, that's just the Lebanon. Yeah, there's a New York Times is also just saying they agreed to talks and they're just talking. Nothing's been there's nothing new, but that's the update. That's the update. Israel and Lebanon are talking, and the Washington Post is spinning it as positive, even though earlier in the day, Netanyahu said there's nothing to negotiate on. Hezbollah needs to be disarmed. Daily Riot. Israel's time is running out. The entire world is turning against them, and they are tired of their war crimes. Bro, you are not wrong. I think it was, I saw this today. I think it was Italy. Italy had said that they are, I think it was with cutting off. It was, I don't know if it's not military aid, but maybe one of their military agreements with Israel, and somewhere in Europe too. I don't remember all the details. I should have written this down, but it does seem like more and more the world over, people are just not into it. There's no wide support for this country. They're not seen as sympathetic. They're not seen as like the victims. The Holocaust guilt has completely worn off because, for so long, the media environment was completely captured, right? If you talked about Israel pretty much anywhere in the Western world, it was going to be that in a positive way, and that they were most likely the victims from all these crazy savages all around them. And that wasn't that hard for us to swallow because most of our relationships with any of these Arab countries or like militant Islam, as it were, was violence. We had 9/11, the Charlie Hebdo thing, like all these different bombings, the Munich Olympics. For years and years, that was our impression of these people. So we're just like, yeah, I guess they are violent savages. Okay, how the fuck do we know? But now that media environment is not captured. You know, it's not just it's not just like the poor defenseless Jews, the crazy Arabs, and then the insane leftists who like ally themselves with like the PLO back in the 70s or whatever. Now it's the conversation is much broader. It's not as centralized. You can have it all over the internet, and people are. And from far right to far left, it's one of the things that people kind of universally agree on, unless you're like a paid Zionist or you're a Zionist Jew. But even along ethnic lines, it's not really the case. I mean, one of the most prominent Israel critics is a Jew named Norman Finkelstein, and Dave Smith and Robbie Bernstein do their show, and they did more to Pill me, Israel Pill me than anyone. So it really is just, the fact is, it's not popular, but it also doesn't seem defensible to stand on the side of Israel. The argument has completely faded. I saw a poll the other day that Israel's underwater, and it was like men under 50 are, and it was a very small margin, but still mostly negative about Israel. That's huge, man. That's a gigantic shift. And like, the thing is too, like, this is what I don't think a lot of people realized is how much goodwill Israel had in this country, right? I will count myself as being largely ignorant to the realities of Israel back on October 7th. I didn't really know what they were up to. I didn't really know about their history. I didn't know about the atrocities. I didn't really know much at all. I just kind of knew what I was supposed to know, and I sort of, took my points, and I'm like, I'm right wing, and I guess I'm pro-Israel. That's really as much as I thought about it. And there was so much goodwill and so much support for the state of Israel after October 7th, because we saw these crazy videos coming out of there and seeing these horrifying attacks on people just going to a music festival. And for us, that didn't feel as foreign. A lot of times, and I've been watching a lot of footage today of like Yemen and stuff. And as empathetic as I am to their plight, it does still feel very foreign. It feels like a different world. But when you see kids at a music festival getting, their heads cut off and raped and stuff like that, you're like, I've been to a music festival. Like you understand, you empathize with that, just sort of them just going about their day, and these crazy fucking Palestinians coming in on hang gliders, and you're just like, oh my God, what an atrocity. And they spoiled all of that goodwill. The whole world was like, oh my God, it's so bad. And that all squandered every last bit of it, to the point where we're just like, yeah, maybe they had a point. I don't know. You get fucking animals, man. Shoot kids in the head as a game. That was something an aid worker said. A doctor, one of those Doctors Without Borders, said that that the IDF soldiers had this game where this was modern. This isn't even in, the 40s or the 70s when the wars were really hot. This is now. They were saying that their favorite game was to shoot Palestinian kids in the head and hope that they would live, as some kind of, just so they'd have like an eternal, like a torture for like a disability for the rest of their life. That was like their favorite game. Fuck you. Fuck that country. Hello, Listless. Spain pieced out completely. That's true. I heard about that. That's right. Spain, Turkey. Yeah, I feel like Turkey was always no, I thought it was like a Scandinavian. I thought it was like a white country, a country that matters. I no, I forgot about who it was, but it was someone. It was like Finland. Someone. I can't quite remember. But anyway. Shippy. My biggest concern is Bibi is going to create a situation where all us commie countries open our borders to mass immigration under the guise of the refugee status, and we'll get even more overwhelmed. Well, that is a common result of these Middle Eastern wars. I mean, that's why the United States has such a flood and influx of all the Somalis. That's why Europe has this sort of crazy flood of all these like Muslims and Islam and Islamist young men, fighting age men, because of our suicidal empathy in the West and a legitimate crisis. And then also, look, a a lot of these countries are poor, even if they're not necessarily particularly persecuted. Like they are poor, and they're just like, wait, so I'm just going to go there. You're going to give me money. You're going to give me a place to stay. You're going to give me a phone. And then there's all these like sexy looking white girls around, and no one's going to tell me what I can and can't do. Yeah, I'm going. Why the hell not? Or I'll go for a few years and then I'll come back home to wherever the hell I'm from. It's this insane thing. And then the West, I mean, it's absurd what's going on in like England and France and these countries in Germany. And it's like illegal to speak about it. You're like, so this is a plan then? If it's illegal for me to protest this because it's racist or whatever, so this is part of the plan? Utterly insane. Daily Riot. There was a stand down order. Even Charlie Kirk said it. They allowed October 7th to happen, and they were hoping it would happen, and they knew it was coming. I've heard this talked about. I haven't looked into it personally. I did hear Charlie Kirk. I saw that clip of him being like, there's all these walls and machine guns. Like, how did this possibly ever happen? And it's totally possible. Israel does like a good false flag. They've done it in the past. It's totally not this would be a false flag, but like looking the other way so that it could happen to justify their massacre. Completely possible. I haven't scrutinized the evidence enough to say I can confidently approach that with any sort of, conclusion, but it's not unlikely. It's not something that I feel is like, oh, that's way outside, you anti-Semitic lunatic. Like, no way. Denmark, maybe it was Denmark. I don't quite remember. Phone, PlayStation, Jesus Christ, spending money in meals. Why don't you just give them meth and a knife? Unreal. And free to travel anywhere. Yeah. Whoopsie. Yeah, we're trying to catch up to England here at the moment. Not good, not gourd. Yeah, I guess probably not for y'all in Australia. You guys are pretty fucking stupid too. But the West, I mean, look at our country. We do all this stupid shit too. It's different, but it's still dumb. Okay, so moving along to the Iran war itself, not the proxy war, which is Lebanon and Israel. This is the actual war. As we were talking about, there's a ceasefire, 2-week ceasefire, and we haven't really gotten anywhere with it. Now, like I said, the United States agreed to these 10 points. Iran agreed to their points. Obviously, everyone's kind of going back and forth over which points that they want to follow through. There were peace talks this weekend in Pakistan with I think it was in Islamabad, and it was with JD Vance and the Iranian delegates. I'm not sure who, and brilliantly, tactfully, deftly, the master negotiators, the art of the deal king himself, included Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Okay, these non-affiliated members of this negotiating team, these double agents, they're the same people who were negotiating when this most current war happened, and when Israel double-crossed them and bombed them last June. Why on earth would the Iranians want to negotiate with these two assholes who keep betraying them, who every single time they sit down with them at the negotiating table, more bombs start falling? You mean we didn't get anywhere with those guys? Holy shit, I can't even believe it. How is that possible? These two wizards, these two guys who are clearly working for Netanyahu to undermine these talks, to make sure we get deeper and deeper in a war. Wow, we didn't progress with those two there. That's mad. I can't even see how that's possible. And JD Vance was leading negotiations. Now, apparently JD Vance was not really given any authority to do anything, which is kind of funny, especially if you don't like JD Vance, like, Nick Fuentes doesn't. And I'll confess, I find him charming. But once you learn about his history and who he really is, he's like, oh, that's because that's what he is. He's a charming politician. Obama was charming too, and he was a two-faced charlatan piece of shit who had no ambitions to help the United States of America or any of the people that he claimed to help, or he wanted to help. So you're like, okay, it's an act. But he was undermined during these negotiations and wasn't allowed to make any decisions. So I guess he had to keep stepping out and calling Trump to relay the information, to relay the new offer to him. And apparently Trump was at the UFC with Marco Rubio. Now, if you remember, and I covered it on this channel at the time, when Trump went to UFC around the election, huge, like Julius Caesar walked in, the biggest pop, everyone loses their mind. John Jones is doing the Trump dance. This time he got booed. Now, I don't think it was as overwhelming, but he got booed, which is pretty funny. So there's Trump at the UFC with Marco Rubio, with little Marco, getting calls from JD Vance while they're trying to negotiate a peace with Pakistan. And it didn't, or sorry, with Iran and Pakistan. And wouldn't you know it, it didn't work. We didn't get anywhere. And this is the vice president himself, JD Vance, and this is what he's got to say on the matter.
If Iran was treated like a normal country, if it had a normal economy, if its people were able to prosper and thrive. But in order for Iran to be a normal country economically, it's going to have to be a normal country from the perspective of not pursuing a nuclear weapon, and it's going to have to be a normal country from not pursuing terrorism. And so there really is, I think, a grand deal to be had here, but it's up to the Iranians, I think, to take the next step.
Oh, I'm an idiot. I'm such an idiot. That wasn't on the screen. I'm just watching it. I'm just watching it while you guys are watching me in silence. I'm a retard. You know what? You weren't talking about me, but that is humiliating. Sorry, listless. But you're like, is he going to do something? I'm so stupid. All right, sorry. This new platform is not, I haven't mastered it yet. So this is a clip from JD. Sorry about that.
If Iran was treated like a normal country, if it had a normal economy, if its people were able to prosper and thrive. But in order for Iran to be a normal country economically, it's going to have to be a normal country from the perspective of not pursuing a nuclear weapon, and it's going to have to be a normal country from not pursuing terrorism. And so there really is, I think, a grand deal to be had here, but it's up to the Iranians, I think, to take the next step.
Oh, wait, you guys could hear it, but you couldn't see it? Oh, my God. What is this platform? This is crazy. Such a weird, the guy who started Rumble, I forgot his name. He was bragging on X about how, hey, everybody should use my streaming studio because, it's the one where you can multi-stream for free. You can do it's all integrated with YouTube. I don't know. I think this stinks, bud. I'm not a fan. Anyway, what's up, Zandy Claus? How you doing? I know. I need to use OBS. You're right, dude. You're right. I really just need to just get savvy with it because this is also stupid. Anyway, Zandy Claus, what's up, buddy? How you doing? I remember the UK envoy called Kushner and Witkoff basically Israeli assets. The UK envoy called them. Yeah, they are. I mean, they are. That's what they are. It's not even hidden. Okay. So there's a few things to unpack with what Mr. JD Vance said there. Now, he associates a normal country with not pursuing nuclear weapons. Okay, I'd like to list off some countries that have nuclear weapons. North Korea, Pakistan, India. Okay, these are countries that are actually less developed and less industrialized than Iran, yet they all have nuclear weapons. How is it that Iran wanting a nuclear weapon? Now, I'm not advocating for this. I'm just saying if they were to pursue that, how would that not make them normal? Wouldn't that make them like all the other powerful nations in the world, like the United States, like Russia, like China, like France? I don't think Germany, but like Israel, for instance, all these other nuclear armed powers. Maybe it's because if they have a nuke, then you can't just push them around and tell them whatever you want to do and put whatever sanctions you want on them and just bomb and massacre their Ayatollah whenever you feel like it. Maybe that's the real issue. Maybe Israel wouldn't feel too comfortable if they had a nuke. Now, once again, I'm not saying they should, but lots of other countries do, and they're not all in the EU, and they're not all in the UN, and they're not all in NATO, yet somehow that's not normal when Iran wants to do it. And the other thing that listless, what's up, Zeb? How you doing, brother? Good to see you, man. It's cracking, man. Yeah, the visuals don't matter with this clip. No, I mean, you're right, but it's still stupid. It's just still dumb of me to just not have it on the screen. Um, oh, thanks, Lily. Thank you very much. That's very nice of you. Wait, nope, not you. Listless. The terrorism thing is hilarious in its irony. It is hilarious because when they say this all the time, they say the world's state sponsor of terror, largest state sponsor of terror, all this terror. Okay, first of all, well, I'll just like to just take a little walk down memory lane. Israel started as a terrorist state. Okay. Israel, the way Israel was able to accomplish its goals early on in its development of Israel through Palestine was straight up through terrorism, and not just against the Palestinian people. They also committed terrorism against the British. They practically invented it. Okay, so let's just put that on the table. Secondly, when they say the largest state sponsor of terror, what they want you to think is 9/11, right? They want you to think of like Charlie Hebdo. They want you to think, oh, this industry, and it's always because the way it's depicted, it's always just completely indiscriminate and completely unmotivated, other than they're just completely warped, radical Islam brains that have no logic in it. It's all just for Allah, and that's all. And it, first of all, generally actually not the case. Sometimes it is, but not always. But who are they a terrorist to? Israel. These are Israel's problems. These terrorist groups, Hezbollah and the Houthis and anyone that they have to deal with, these are Israel's enemies. And as we pointed out with Hezbollah, right, they're entrenched in the government. It's not even like ISIS or Al Qaeda where they kind of go wherever anyone they'll keep them, and they set up bases and indiscriminately attack civilians and stuff. No, these are like militant groups, certainly, that do commit terrorist acts, certainly, but they are just enemies of Israel who fight in an asymmetric way. So when you say terrorism, it makes you think, well, they got to go. They couldn't possibly have any point. They couldn't possibly be standing up for their rights or for, because it's like, okay, what should they do? Let's say they have a beef with Israel. Now, obviously, Israel and the United States can't possibly have the opinion that launching wars is wrong or off the table, right? Because that's, I mean, go ahead and try. But so what should they do? Should they just amass their ragtag, ricky-ticky fucking army and just stand in like columns, with like the one tank they have and a bunch of those, the Toyota trucks with like 50 caliber machine guns on the back, and then just go toe to toe with Western armies? Just be out there in the open so they can just get airstriked to death and their whole army can get wiped out? Or are they going to fight asymmetrically? Are they going to stick and move? Are they going to hit rocket attacks that keep you psychologically on your toes? Are they going to find other ways to try to affect their goals? Now, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but I am saying that this is fucking war, and just calling it terrorism doesn't mean anything. That's just the way that they say these things so that they can, leverage whatever decision making they want to do. This is war. They're at war with Israel. That's how it's going to be fought. Just simply because they have a beef doesn't automatically make them wrong. It's pretty wild. Anyway, hell yeah, USS Liberty Daily Riot. Let's go. If you don't fight with a state-of-the-art military like we do, it's terrorism. That's exactly how they want you to think of it, which is just the most retarded thing possible. Because it's like, how are they supposed to affect their goals? They have points. They're not wrong. I mean, it's like the ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel was broken because of October 7th, because of the way they were massacring the Palestinians. And so they fought. Now, like, you could argue maybe that's not necessarily the right thing to do for your own particular political aims. But objectively, what they were doing to the Palestinians was evil, was ungodly, massacring tens of thousands, who knows, maybe 100,000 civilians mostly, is evil. So what? Because they didn't do it with an airstrike, that makes that now it's like unforgivable? It's crazy. We have just been propagandized so much into the way what these people think, why this is wrong. It's like, 9/11's wrong. Attacking civilians is wrong, but like attacking, fighting a war, I don't know what they're supposed to do. Lily, we should be letting Israel do their own fighting. Trump is betraying us by kowtowing to them and giving them a front row seat to the table regarding everything. Shake my head. I'm so sick of this crap. Yeah, dude. Well, and a lot of people are, man. It's spreading. It's a growing opinion. It's a growing point of view, and that's good. It doesn't mean this shit's gonna stop. Right up until the war, right before the war, this most recent war kicked off, I was watching Provoked with Daryl Cooper and Scott Horton. It's a great show. You should check it out. They do it live on Friday nights, but the replays are really worth watching. And I try to watch it every week. But the last one, right before this war kicked off, they had done the show that Friday night, and the war kicked off Saturday morning at like 2 a.m. Daryl was saying this is probably the last opportunity for Israel to get this war off the ground, because if they don't get it now, when they kind of have like some degree of not justifiability, but let's just say political leverage to accomplish it, they're probably not going to get it. And this is something that Netanyahu and the greater Israel Zionists are aware of. They know this is not going to happen. If like this drags out to the midterms, it's over. Like there's no chance they're accomplishing their goals. So they're going to put as much pressure on Trump as they can to get him to go back and finish this job. And that's the thing too, is like finishing this job really doesn't, what does that even mean? Nukes? I mean, I'm sure that they would want that, but I don't know. I honestly don't see it happening. I don't really see it as a potential reality, but it might happen. I don't know. We're going to have to see. It's hard to say. Okay, so, you know what? This is related to the Iran war. Before I pivot, there was just one thing I wanted to show you, and I thought it was really interesting. It was something that I did not know of, and I had just heard of recently, and I thought like, huh. And this is a guy who this is on Tucker Carlson's show, and this was from late last week. Alistair Crook. He's a director of the Conflicts Forum. He used to be British MI6. And this is him talking about this particular conflict, and pretty interesting. Different reality than I thought for some brought up. And I was like, as close as I've been paying attention to these conflicts, even this was enlightening to me. I genuinely didn't know that. So let's see. Let's play this clip here. And this time I will put it on the screen. There it is. See, I actually did it. All right.
But in the other aspects, which will be seen, strike probably listeners as even more surprising, is that their casualties are probably less than in the 12-day war. Why? Well, because what they learned from the 12-day war is evacuate all public buildings that you possibly can, perhaps leaving hospitals, but everything.
There's more to this clip, but isn't just that one detail fascinating? That Iran's casualties in this war are less than the 12-day war? Because this one's been going on for, is it a month? How many weeks did we get into it? 6 weeks? It was bordering on 2 months, like full on war. And in 12 days, they took more casualties than they've taken in this war, where we have just bombarded that country. I heard it was something, I think it was like something like 30,000 missile strikes and bombs and stuff that have been launched on this country, and they took less casualties in this war. That's what this guy's saying. This is just this guy. Yeah, I don't know how accurate his reporting is. I haven't seen anything corroborating this, but that's what he's saying. Pretty fascinating.
Everything else empty. State buildings, security buildings, educational buildings, all are empty. And so the attacks, which are focused very much on those, have caused far fewer casualties. Even though there may be a caretaker or someone who unfortunately is killed in these, and of course civilians being killed. I mean, many civilians being killed where residential areas have been attacked. But on the whole, they have had fewer casualties. And the second thing is that their military is in better shape than it was at the end of the war.
This detail that he's going to highlight right here is the most enlightening detail. And if this is true, and I'm just going to assume for the argument here that it is true, then you have to know that CENTCOM knows this, that the United States military knows this, and Israel, not that Israel cares as much because they have more of a stomach for this type of stuff. They've been in some degree of conflict and war pretty much since the beginning of their country, and it just never really fully stops. So they have more of a stomach for this type of shit. But even they know with their Iron Dome depleted. And the thing is, too, this has been said by many other people, and I'm pretty sure I've said it too, but the military stockpiles that we've depleted are very, very difficult to restock. We don't have the ability to just, even if we did like a World War II style thing where we converted all our factories into just making all these ammunitions and stuff, there's only so many factories, there's only so many places that can commission these parts and these like radar systems and the rare earth metals that go into these very sophisticated missiles. They're not just like ordnance, you drop out of a plane with a little scope from World War II. It's like these things are guided. They have all these different, like all this technology in them, and they're very hard to replenish. So, side note, I hate the fact that there's no T in the word replenish. I know that just is an aside and a complete non sequitur, but that always bugs me. I was so sure that and I'm like, why is Google wrong about this? And it's like, there's no T. And it's like, there should be plenty, replenish. Why is there no T in this word? Anyway, but they are very difficult to replenish because of how difficult they are to make. So we don't have the ability to even go back out this war the way we had been. We don't have the interceptors, and we don't have like the tomahawks. We don't have all the different weapons that we've been using to fight this war. Even if we wanted to, even if we didn't give a shit about this ceasefire, we would have to change the way we're fighting it, which would have to be troops or nukes. Pretty much. So this is the wait, what are you gonna say in here? Okay, never mind. This I thought was absolutely fascinating.
First of all, the reason for that is again a rather strange one. The Iranians bought a lot of these decoys, huge numbers of decoys from the Chinese that imitated airplanes and missiles and so on. But the Chinese gave them a twist, which was interesting. And I didn't know this before, but they have a heat source in. So that when they're picked up by radar or by sensors, it looks real because, it not only looks the part, but it actually emits the heat of a real missile or an airplane. And so largely the Israelis and the United States have been bombing decoys. They've also been trying to bomb the main missile cities. But if you take
just pause there for a second. So even with all the sophistication of the United States military, the most powerful military in the entire world, with all of our sensors and all our satellites and all the drones and everything that we have, the C-130s and those big eyes in the sky and Reaper drones and the, the F-18 and all that stuff, we were bombing decoys half the time. We weren't even bombing missile sites. We thought we were. We thought we were bombing some of those mobile platforms. We thought we were bombing some of their aircraft. And we were just hitting sophisticated Chinese decoys that give off a heat signature. So, like I said, if I know this and you know this, and this is on the Tucker Carlson show, you better be damn sure that the United States intelligence, establishment knows this. So, like I said, even if they want to fight this war the way they had been, they literally can't. They don't. The Iran is not as diminished as even in the optimistic estimations and even the more cynical estimations, because this is new information when you consider how many bombs had been dropped and how many strikes had been and all the estimates. Like, this is a new data point. There's okay, so you have to lower even your most even the So you have to raise even the most conservative estimates of how much had been destroyed. Now you have to add that, oh, well, presumably they must have more because we've been bombing decoys the whole fucking time. Not to say we got nothing, but who knows what percentage? Who knows? Iran's been planning on this war for 30 years. They've been building their entire country, their entire infrastructure to fight this exact kind of war. So they better figure out something with the nuclear discussion. They better figure it out, because it's not something that Iran's going to budge on, and they've got the upper hand here. And if we don't, it's like, is Trump just going to back off and be like, okay, hey, our bad. The thing is, he really can't. Strategically, he actually can't. He can't allow Iran to get $1 billion in tolls from the Strait of Hormuz toll. He cannot do that, even from our interest, not even considering Israel's interests. From our interests, he can't just back off and allow them to get $100 billion a year in tolls, because Saudi Arabia is one of our biggest allies. They are not allies with Iran. They don't want that to happen. All the Arab countries in the region, Bahrain, UAE, they're not there. They're like, hell no, we can't just let them become like the most dominant force in the region now. Maybe, but hey, they may just win outright and get all these things. I can't see them getting anything without any concessions. But like I said, if you do all the math here, we don't have the weapons to execute the war we want to. We don't have popular support or any global support from any of our allies, not from France, not from South Korea, not from Japan, not from England. Nobody wants to fight this war with us. So putting troops on the ground is going to make it very difficult. I mean, a lot of these countries won't even let us fly missions out of their nations. And these are NATO allies that won't let us do it. So we don't have the popular support to fight it. We don't have the weapons to fight the way we wanted to. If we were to fire a nuke, I mean, you could that would be that's it, the end of the American empire, because now our authority, our moral authority, as bullshit as it is now gone for good. You're going to hurt all these allies. That part of the world will be, won't be the same for 1,000 years. It's Trump really is so backed into a corner. He has no options really, but he should just go home. And even that is a humiliating and incredibly detrimental defeat. Not just a defeat in the sense of like, he looks bad. He looks like an idiot. We're weaker on the world stage. Like, it's not something he can afford to do. What's up, Zach? How you doing, brother? Hey, I'm with you. Take the L is how I feel about it, listless, but I don't think he can. Replenish and plentiful have different root word origins. All right, nerd. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm not, obviously not like a wordsmith, okay? But they sound so similar. Okay. And so we'll just play the rest of this clip and then we're going to move on.
A main one like Yaz. It is buried in a granite mountain, 800 meters deep, really deep, and there's sort of concrete. And there's a whole railway system underneath this, tunnels and railway systems under this mountain. And they deliver the missiles on railway trucks, and the railway takes it right up to the entrance. An airtight door opens, it moves to the entrance, and the missile is fired. The airtight door comes down and the train withdraws. Well, the Israelis have been bombing this, and the mountain is getting blacker and blacker, but it's not affecting their missiles. And these missiles, and I've made this point many times, what they haven't understood about the mosaic system that the Iranians started planning for this asymmetric war 20 years ago is that they are dispersed across the extent of Iran,
So think about that. Think about that, right? Even if we had been bombing the missile sites, even if we had been getting all the things that weren't decoys, they have an underground rail system under mountains where they build these missiles. Look, I think maybe it's a tad early to say, but the way it looks to me now, I think all this war proved was you can't fuck with Iran. You can't fuck with them. They were like, all right, fuck us, fuck you. We're turning our country into a fortress. We've got we know what you're going to throw at us. We've got a complete underground society, a lattice of tunnels and mountains and facilities underground that you can't touch unless you invade. And if you invade, we are going to make you pay. Like I'm sure the IRGC is not as sophisticated as, Delta Force. I'm sure in certain engagements, it'll probably be a similar thing to Iraq, where the number of casualties on their end is tremendous and our casualties are minute in comparison. But that still means you're going to be sending home hundreds, if not thousands of Americans in coffins. You're going to be spending all these trillions of dollars. And like, look, when we fought Iraq, we were not $40 trillion in debt. Now, people talk about the fact that the debt doesn't really matter. It's all about GDP versus, okay, maybe that's true. But eventually that number is going to get high to our world credit is going to take a hit. That's just going to have, that's normal finance. Like that has to happen at some point. So we don't have the flexibility to just balloon our national debt another 20 trillion to fight one of these retarded wars. We just can't, we cannot do this. We lost. Like this war is lost. And no matter what we do, we lose. If we nuke them, we lose. If we invade, we lose. If we go home, we lose. We lost. That's it. That's my summation of this thus far. This thing changes a lot. Who knows where this is going to go? But the way I'm looking at it, what I'm looking at on the board, I'm looking at Iran not touched, so to speak, fully capable of continuing the war they want. Us, our allies, being very hurt. Israel being depleted from these Patriot missiles. And like I said, we can't just build new ones. They don't work like that. We lost. That's it. Lee 007. He put our country in a position to look weak and foolish. It's honestly insane. Multiple people, including Charlie Kirk, warned him that this was a horrible idea. That's why I believe Candace Owens. Look, I didn't think anything of that conspiracy theory until I saw all those clips have been talking about this Iran war. And then you couple that with the fact that, Nick Fuentes predicting accurately that this Trump presidency was all going to be about getting us to war with Iran. Well, you do the math on that. That was the plan all along. Charlie Kirk, being one of the most influential conservatives in this country and talking to the youth, having that whole contingent on his side, might be convenient to get rid of him. I need evidence before I'll believe it, but it makes sense. It tracks logically. It's not what I thought when it first happened, but it's possible. China just sails on. They got stronger through this war too. They didn't even have to do anything and they got stronger. They just realized if they want to take Taiwan, they can. What do they have to worry about? What the hell are you going to do? We couldn't get our carriers within it was like an insane distance from the Iranian coast because of how vulnerable we were to drones and missile strikes. And that distance is way shorter from China to Taiwan. So they know there's nothing we can do if they just decide to take it one day. Maybe they don't want the smoke, but maybe now they'll try. They got immensely stronger. You're not wrong. The loss is going to impact us heavily in the future. We have cut our losses though, and get the hell out of there and end our friendly relationship with Israel. Well, yeah, but that ain't gonna happen. It's like, look, as compromised as Trump clearly is by the state of Israel and the fact that he's, very much in bed, that they're inside his fucking walls, right? Remember that it's not just like the administration is incredibly A, Jewish, but B, bought and paid for by Israel, Marco Rubio, like all the inner circle. These guys they're in the cult. They're in the gang, right? They're, like I said, they're in his fucking walls. He can't just walk out. And don't forget, the Senate and Congress are all bought and paid for by AIPAC too. It's a majority that's significant. It approaches something like 80 to 90% of these bodies are bought and paid for by AIPAC. Now, who knows? If they all say collectively, go fuck yourself at the same time, maybe they can get away with it. But this is an entrenched power. And by the way, it goes beyond the government. It's in finance. It's in media. It goes well beyond just like, who happens to be elected this cycle. It's an entrenched power here. So telling them to go fuck themselves, there's going to be consequences. It's not just going to be like, well, we used to run the world, but I guess we're going to have to pack up and go home, boys. That ain't happening. So keep that in mind too. I'm with you, by the way. I'll never forget that Shabbat Shalom comment regarding her Christian husband coming home from work on a Friday. Law. I'll never heard any Christian man. Who was this? Trump? I don't know. All right. Anyway, we're going to move on. We're going to play a clip here. This is from Breaking Points. As I've talked as a valid news, a good news outlet. I like them, despite the fact that, Crystal Ball is a really stupid name, and she's pretty liberal. They're great on this war, and they're up to date. They do a live show 5 days a week. That's like a news show, but it's not full of lying retards. It's not full of just deceitful, crows, at least not as of now. But it's so they do a good job, and they're talking about this war. So I reckon if you feel like you need to stay informed on this beyond just listening to the MFer podcast, which is totally, hey, by the way, this is a great outlet. So, nothing to shake a stick at here. Just messing around. But I would recommend checking out Breaking Points because they are real solid. They put out multiple clips a day, and they're a good way to learn about this. So this is something that I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to spend the rest of the show dedicated to this topic. Now, this is something that Sager brings up here, and I think it's absolutely worth noting.
To come through, all have been able to do so. Another very, very troubling bit of news actually is A11. Let's put that up there on the screen. This shows the danger to the U.S. military, and this is from U.S. Naval Institute. So they say, the carrier USS George H.W. Bush is currently operating off southern Africa as the Iranian blockade begins. Now, they kind of buried the headline because what they're saying is that the USS George W. Bush is off the coast of Namibia because it's going to have to sail around the entire African continent and set to join the growing naval force in the Arabian Sea amid the blockade of the Straits of Hormuz. Now, it deployed at the end of March, and it did not sail via a typical transit for East Coast-based carriers to the Middle East. And the reason why is that this allows the carrier to avoid transiting the Red Sea and the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, which were both hubs of activity for the Houthis in their drone and missile attacks on commercial shipping in 2024 and 2025. So I think what this confirms more than anything is U.S. fear of the Houthis and of the Red Sea. That has not previously yet been closed in the entire Iran war, but it remains like the ultimate trump card if they can close both the Straits of Hormuz and the Red Sea. But look, a carrier.
Okay, so this is what we're going to spend the rest of the show talking about. So last week, I went into a deep dive about Hezbollah. Today, we're going to do a deep dive about the Houthis because I'm learning about this with you. Like, a lot of these things get thrown around in these narratives and these stories, these wars, these conflicts, and these names come up all the time. Hezbollah comes up all the time. Houthis come up all the time. But I'll be honest, if I knew anything about them beyond what they told me, I'd be lying. And so I've decided that, okay, if I'm going to talk about this stuff, then I should be informed. And so I'm spending as much time as I can digging into these things. So last week we talked about Hezbollah. Today we're going to talk about the Houthis so we can get into who these people are and why they're such a problem, right? As we talked about last week with Hezbollah, they're not just like this terrorist group. They're a government. They are part of the government. So what Sager was talking about is that the George H.W. Bush carrier is around here, right down in the Horn of Africa, right? Go down the Horn, go to the Great Cape of Good Hope. If you've ever seen Mutiny or The Bounty, I'm sorry, with Mel Gibson and Anthony Hopkins, great film. Go around the Horn, sir. Fantastic movie. Okay, so they're here, right, to go all the way up here. to where this is the Persian Gulf, that's Iran, this is the Strait of Hormuz, and this is, the Arabian Sea, right? So they're going to go this way. Now, typically, the way they would go is to go across the North Atlantic, right? They come from here, they go through the Strait of Gibraltar over here, and they come down, through the Mediterranean, down into Egypt, and go into the Suez Canal, right? The Suez Canal is here, and it brings you to the Persian Gulf, right? Okay, well, they can't do that. Or sorry, the Gulf of Suez. Sorry, the Gulf of Suez into the Red Sea, right? Because they have to go down the Red Sea to get over here. And the reason why is this area. This is called the Bab al-Mandeb, right? It's another waterway that's very contentious because it's the same thing as the Strait of Hormuz. If you look at the Strait of Hormuz, you can see here, right? It's this awkward geography. And this is Iran right here. And they have complete access to being able to attack from the mainland. Like, this is not very far. This is not even 20 miles, right? I think it's like, and it's like, certain areas. And the strait, you have to navigate, like these waters here are shallow. So you have to navigate here to accomplish, safe traversal. Well, that makes them the ripest targets, especially for oil tankers, because like they go super slow. Seriously, like 5 to 10 knots. It's like you ride a bike faster than that. And they're just giant bombs just sitting there waiting to be attacked, right? Okay, so down over here, right, this is United Arab Emirates, this is Oman, and this is Yemen. And Yemen has this one, and it's the same thing. And an immense amount of cargo from Asia to Europe and Europe to Asia goes through here. There's the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, and this choke point. Now, who controls that? Well, the answer is the Houthis. Who are the Houthis? Great question. The Houthis are complicated, right? The Houthis are even more as we talk about, Hezbollah being entrenched in the Lebanese government. The Houthis, you could argue, are the Yemenis government and have been for a very long time. So I've crammed a lot of this information. I'm not going to be able to recount it all, like verbatim, but I'm going to do my best here. Okay, so this over here, this is Yemen, right? This is the important part of Yemen, and not just having to do with this other strait or this other crossing. This is just where all the population is. This is where all the farmland is. Most of this is just desert, not really usable. So if you want to control the country, you control this part. Now, the capital is here. Or wait, is it Saba? Saba, or I think it's... See, this is where I start to lose it. But the capital's on this side. I think this is the capital here. Now, the Houthis, right, they're part of this Muslim minority. They are also Shia, just like the Iranians and the Hezbollah, right? They're Shia, which is a Muslim minority. Now, inside of that Muslim minority is another Muslim minority known as like the Zadeh. You know what? I should just try not to remember it. Zaidi. That's it. Zaidi. So it's an even different Muslim minority. Now, Yemen is extraordinarily tribal and fractionalized. Like there's a map of like all these different regions where all these different Muslim tribes are sort of sect off. But this one was a very powerful one, and in fact ran the country for like 1,000 years. Was like they were the dominant like sect that ran the country. Now, there was this corrupt leader whose name is escaping me right now, began with a S, who like had run the country for a long time and had chased the Houthis out. And so the Houthis were up here in this part. Well, sorry, not the Houthis. They weren't the Houthis yet. They were the Zaydis. The Zaydi Muslims were up here because they felt underrepresented by this corrupt government. Then this guy in that government, he resigns in protest and then goes up and joins the Zaydis. And his name was Hussein al-Houthi, right? That's his name. He leaves and then starts this youth group that kind of grows more and more radically over the years, right? Up through into the 90s, or sorry, start in the 90s, but then become like much more radical as the government is more and more corrupt. And the government is kind of the guy who ran this country for the longest time, total opportunist, tin pot dictator dickhead, right? Stole all this money from like the people, like acquired himself billions of dollars, totally corrupt piece of shit. Now, Yemen is one of the poorest countries in the Middle East, right? So that's saying something. In this region, one of the poorest countries in the Middle East. Now and they also, just to point out, also one of the lowest IQs per capita. I think Iran's one of the highest, and Yemen's one of the lowest. Just so you know, just so we understand who we're talking about here. So this guy, the guy, God, I have to remember his fucking name. Let's see if I can't just find it real quick, because it's driving me crazy that I can't think of it. Ali Abdul Saleh. Saleh, that's his name. Okay, so he was the leader for a long time. Total piece of shit. Corrupt as hell. Saudis hated him. The Yemenis hate him. Just a piece of shit. But the West is okay with him. He's not really affecting us too much. But the locals, the Houthis, absolutely hate him. So they eventually kind of start like a coup, the Houthis, as they get stronger, and they move down into the capital. Now, Saudi Arabia, not into that. So they start a war with the Houthis. Right now, the Houthis and the Saudis are at war, and the whole country kind of breaks out into civil war. This guy Saleh gets kicked out, and this guy Hadi, Hadi, gets put in. Now he's what most of us would probably consider like a puppet, right? He's a Western aligned guy who's just going to do whatever the hell, the West wants, probably what Israel wants. He's one of these guys. Well, the guy Saleh, instead of like getting killed or deposed or leaving, he's like, fuck you. He decides instead he takes his most loyal soldiers and goes up to where the Houthis, this new militant group, where they're staying up in the mountains, and they're called because he's also a Zaidi Muslim. He's also, surprisingly, part of their minority sect. So they end up joining forces. So the dictator that the Houthis were trying to overthrow ends up joining forces with the Houthis, and this guy Hadi is in power. So then there's this war, and it's an endless war. And this war is actually quietly one of the worst things that has been going on in the world in the past 10, 15, 20 years. It's horrific. So the Saudis, well, where should I go? Okay, so what ends up happening is eventually, because the Saudis are now involved in this war, they're fighting a war because the Zaydas, like the Houthis, started a war. They kind of spill over into the border over here, which is technically Saudi Arabia. They're not into that. And then as the war's kicking off, they start doing attacks over here and killing Saudi civilians. Now, fuck that. Saudi Arabia starts going full on war with Yemen. So with the Houthis. So the Houthis occupy all this territory. They have this deposed Saleh guy with them. He ends up getting offered a deal by the Saudis. Then they execute him like a few days after that. So now it's like the loyal guard and the Houthis are now strengthened. So they're fighting a war against the Saudis. And at the same time, because Saudi Arabia actually has contingents of Al-Qaeda inside of their country, they moved down south into this region where the Yemeni version of Al-Qaeda is. Additionally, Al-Qaeda members from kind of all over the Middle East are coming into Yemen because now that Yemen is destabilized, they want to make it like a home base for themselves, right? So Al-Qaeda's over on this part of the country. Now the Houthis are fighting a war against Al-Qaeda, right? And Saudi Arabia. Now, we, at the time, this is during the Obama administration for the most part, we at the time end up aligning with the Houthis because, well, we're at war with Al-Qaeda, right? That was our whole thing in the 2000s and the 2010s. That was our goal. So we have this golden opportunity. We don't even need to arm these guys. We just need to kind of help them with intelligence, and we'll let them fight Al-Qaeda for us, and that's great. And we do that for a little while. Then the Saudis get pissed off because of our war with Iraq, which ended up strengthening Iran, which is something that Saudi Arabia didn't want because, like I pointed out earlier, they're enemies with one another. So what ends up happening is fucking Obama completely betrays, the Obama administration completely betrays the Houthis there, like the people who were kind of for like a little while not quite our allies, but we were using them to help fight our battles. They turn their back on them and start like supplying Saudi Arabia, excuse me, with money and military aid. And military aid so much so that we're refueling their fighter jets while Saudi Arabia is committing war atrocities on a level that, you know, makes Israel blush, right? Like they're bombing their farms, they're bombing goat fields, they would bomb funerals. They didn't give a shit. They were committing what you could really argue was a genocide on the Yemeni people. In this war that had gone on for all this time, almost, I think it was like approaching 400,000 Yemeni people have died. And because additionally, also due to starvation, because like of this waterway, right, it goes both ways, the Saudis blockaded it. So they blockaded any access to aid, and eventually aid would get in, but you know, it took too long. A lot of it was rotting, and these people, you know, were dying. There were cholera outbreaks in immense numbers, which, you know, a lot of that really just you just get clean drinking water. You don't even need medicine necessarily to survive cholera, but you know, they don't have access to that. They don't have plumbing. They don't have electricity. They don't have garbage disposal. Like this is a poor country to begin with. And now it's just in an absolute hellish war where we were kind of helping them and then turned our backs and Obama administration helped fight with Al-Qaeda. So Yemen is fighting Al-Qaeda over here, Saudi Arabia over here. And guess what? They fucking survived. They survived that whole fucking war, right? Not to say that it wasn't horrific. And the situation in Yemen is still a fucking nightmare. It's still a horrific humanitarian crisis that absolutely needs to be dealt with. But media doesn't really talk about it. People don't really know about it. So it's not something that, you know, gets a lot of coverage. But as far as I like, and then, okay, so then they're like, the UN managed to create a peace. So that's what ends up happening. But the Houthis survived. Houthis did not get knocked out of power. They still control this part of the country, right? So they are still like the de facto government. Now you're going to hear people call them the Houthi rebels. That's how they're always going to be referred to. But who are they rebelling against? There's this thing they call the guy Hadi, who is like the installed like new dictator that the West wants to have in, that the UN recognizes as a government. But that guy is in a hotel here in Riyadh governing from afar. That ain't happening. Okay. So that guy's just collected money, you know, living like a fat, like I said, Middle Eastern despot life. You know, it's just like a series of these guys. But in reality, the Houthis are the ones who control this part of they control Yemen, basically. Probably not the entire thing and probably not, you know, completely securely, but they do control the country. Now, the Houthis are not great guys. Like, as I pointed out earlier, like the IQ here in this country is not very high. And these particular people are mountain people for the most part, like the Zetas. God damn, I can't remember this. Zetas. What did I say? Zadie? Yeah, I'm thinking like the cartel. The Zaydis are mountain people, which if you know anything about mountain people, they are tough. You know, that is something that we found out in Afghanistan. That's what they say about like the Appalachians. You know, people in mountain areas are tough, hardy, live off the land, have a connection with the land, are not easy to get rid of, not easy to just defeat because you decided you want to defeat them one day. That's not how it works. So the Houthis survived all that. Now, if you'll remember in the beginning of the Trump administration, well, actually, I'll go back just a little bit further in that. Towards the end of the Biden administration, in this strait is when, in this waterway is when this first started to become an issue because they had done some hijackings. Now, like, once again, like, this is the thing, right? As much as like this is America's war, and it is, you know, because of Saudi Arabia and the way Obama like helped the Saudis and helped literally on the side of Al-Qaeda during this war. A lot of this still ties in to Israel, right? This is the thing. This is the trick that Israel pulls on us all the time, right? They have like a decree, the Houthis do, and it's like not Western, not Israel, fuck the Jews, so on and so forth, right? But when they say like these places are like anti-Western, right? It's like they probably have an aversion to the West. They probably don't like us. They probably wouldn't want our values, but they don't. If we're not fucking with them, they're not really going to fuck with us. The thing is, Israel keeps fucking with everybody. And so we get pulled into more of Israel's issues, right? So after October 7th, from all the way the fuck down here, this fucking poor country with these tough little fucking mountain people fired rockets at Israel and hit all the way the fuck down here. You believe? I don't even know. Like, that's a lot of, all the way through Saudi Arabia. They fired rockets and hit Israel. Right. So what they say is with the Houthis. Now, this is contentious. So like when we were talking about Hezbollah, they are openly a proxy of Iran. They're Shia Muslims as well. They have had like IRGC training. The IRGC, the Iranian Republican or the Revolutionary Guard Coalition, I think is what it's called. I forget, but that's the RGC, the Iranian military. They have exchanges, and that's very open. That's not open. This, they talk all the time. They say Iran backed. They always drive it in your head. Iran's bad, terrorism. Just remember, the Iran backed Houthis. It's not as clear. Now, the Saudis have intercepted weapons that were supposed to be going to Yemen that come from Iran. They've recovered weapons and stuff that are Iranian, but neither side says that they're like working with the other. It's a little gray, but they do always keep talking about activating the Houthis, right? And maybe the Houthis are de facto on the Iranian side. They are Shia after all. And you saw, what happened with the mostly Sunni Palestine. They fired rockets across the whole Middle East to hit Israel in defense, right? So they're worried about this, which brings us to today, which is the fact that these Sunnis are, sorry, I'm just reading my notes here. These fighters, these Zaidi Muslim Houthi fighters, once again, they're not as they were talked about, right? They've been the victims of this war. Yes, they started or whatever, but they're up against Saudi Arabia, up against the United States, up against Al Qaeda, survived it all. They are representative of a historic Muslim minority that ran the country for like 1,000 years. These aren't just, backwards fucking kids with nothing going on in their lives who want to pick up an AK-47 and kill a Jew. These are people who are trying to occupy and take their country back. Now, listen, they're hardline extremist Muslims. I wouldn't want to live under their rule, trust me, but this is how they see it, and they have lots of supporters, and that war only helped gain and strengthen them. So if you remember, that's right, that's what I was going to talk about. Sorry, the Biden administration, they hijacked this boat, very high profile. We bombed them. Then back in the beginning of the Trump administration, which I guess was probably still related to October 7th, they were attacking boats coming through the Red Sea. It was a thing, right? So, and Trump threatens he's going to bomb them worse than you've ever seen. He's going to bomb the shit out of them and blah, 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 and couldn't stop them. And, they are still there. So this is who we're talking about. So when they say they're going to activate the Houthis and they talk about this, this strait here, and this crossing here, this is what they're talking about. And the American government and the American military must think they're a significant enough threat, because instead of going through the Strait of Gibraltar, down through the Suez and into the Red Sea, they decide to go all the way around Africa. If you remember, the George H.W. left in March. It's not exactly flying across the world. Okay, so look, maybe part of Trump's ceasefire was literally just to give the HW enough time to get into the Arabian Sea. I don't know. But I just thought that we should know about that. Now, I don't think that was as concise or precise, but this one's way more complicated. Hezbollah is a little bit more easier to understand. The Yemeni war, the origin of the Houthis, like who's fighting who and who's backing who, it's actually a lot more complicated and complex. But it's important to understand, right, that this once again, this is the government. This is the people of Yemen. When they talk about, they flippantly describe them as Iran backed, makes them sound like a gang, makes them sound like a handful of guys with RPGs and AK-47s. Very much not the case. These are battle hardened motherfuckers who've held this country for 20 years. Maybe not 20 years, but 10 or more, who've like fought Saudi Arabia, who basically is our proxy. They buy all this military equipment. They're armed and decked out in our military fatigues, all that stuff. Fought Al Qaeda at the same time and survived. That's who these people are. Like I said, probably not the type of people I'd want to have as neighbors, wouldn't want them in charge of my country, but you just have to understand that this isn't just rinky-dink backwoods, like some militia. This is a relatively sophisticated enemy with access to high-level weaponry that occupies this country and has held it for a while when a lot of very powerful people did not want them to. So that is another angle of this conflict that may or may not become very relevant in the coming days and weeks. I hope it doesn't. I hope Trump just goes home with his tail between his legs and is like, you know what, Ben, BB, you're an asshole. I'm not really doing your bidding anymore. This keeps not working out for me. So I hope that that's what happens. But I thought it was worth talking about because it's potentially has a lot of relevancy. And honestly, we probably haven't heard the last of from the Houthis, for the next, I don't know, who knows how many more years. They didn't, Saudi Arabia and the United States combined with Al Qaeda couldn't get rid of these guys. And I don't know, Israel's pretty bloodthirsty and tough, but I don't think they're getting rid of these guys. So they're not going anywhere. So anyway, thought that we would talk about that tonight. I'll give you a little update on the war. I don't know if I'm going to be streaming again this Thursday. Probably not. I have a lot on my plate. Oh yeah, I have an announcement to make. That's right. I forgot. I have an announcement to make. On Sunday nights, from moving forward, I'm going to be streaming a new show on the network, the New American Vision. If you're familiar with Zeb Boykin or Atlas Thugged or any of those fellas, they've been on this channel before. They offered me very, very graciously a position to do a new show on Sunday nights over there, which I've dubbed Right Wing Pulse, where I will basically be talking about whatever podcast conversations, video creators and stuff that had gone on the prior week that are related to, this side of the political spectrum, the sort of more American nationalist, pro-American nativist point of view, far right, whatever the hell you want to call it. But that's going to be that show. So check that out. I'll probably be promoting it. Not that any of you follow me on Twitter. I'm just fucking around, but that will be that's a new thing we're going to be doing. So come check that shit out. I think that's going to do it. I thank you very much for watching this episode of the MFer podcast. Like I said, probably not doing it this Thursday. Got a lot on my plate this week. Maybe if something big happens, I probably will. But if not, you're just going to have to, watch old episodes and just think about the good times. Remember when we had that connection. Me and the 8 people in the chat. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of the MFer podcast. Thank you very much for watching. Have a fantastic week. I'll definitely see you next Tuesday, maybe this Thursday. I don't know, but be there Sunday night. New American Vision, Right Wing Pulse. All right, y'all.